Welcome to the Sound on Sound Recording and Mixing Channel podcast. I'm Paul White, and I'm going to cover a few of the less obvious things you can do with Auto-Tune or similar real-time pitch correctors. Auto-Tune isn't a miracle cure for bad vocals, but it is an effective tool for adding polish to vocals that have the right feel, but maybe slightly imperfect pitching. It's a lot easier to use than offline editors of the type pioneered by Melodyne. However, the offline approach is often better suited to more surgically precise pitch correction work. I'll start by covering the more common applications of Auto-Tune, but there are also some very creative things that you can do with it that might not immediately be obvious. Tip 1 is only to use pitch correction where you really need it, and then set the retune speed to be no faster than it needs to be to pull the problem notes into pitch. That way you won't introduce any unpleasant and unnatural artifacts. You'll get the best results by setting Auto-Tune's musical scale to that of the sung part, or by manually entering only those notes that you know are being sung. Chromatic mode does work, but if the singer drifts more than half a semitone out of pitch, the pitch corrector will then pull the pitch to the nearest semitone rather than the note that you want. If only specific words or phrases need treatment, you can automate the retune speed, keeping it as slow as possible other than for the sections that need to be corrected. Alternatively, move the offending phrases to a separate track and then use Auto-Tune only on that track. This technique also works well if the song includes a key change or if the scale notes are different for the verse and chorus. Just put each section on its own track with its own Auto-Tune scale settings. Now first, here's a section of vocal from Alice Rose Wild, which is already pretty much in pitch, but then again with a gentle application of Auto-Tune. The Auto-Tune version still sounds perfectly natural, but the pitching has been tightened up. And now with some gentle Auto-Tune. It is important that when adding effects, such as reverb, as I've done here, that the reverb comes after Auto-Tune. That's because Auto-Tune requires the cleanest possible signal in order to extract the pitch of the incoming audio. Tip 2. If you specifically want to create the well-known pitch-quantized robotic effect of the type heard on countless records, one approach is simply to set the pitch correction speed dial to its fastest setting. This will strip away most of the natural pitch scoops and vibrato, leaving you with a vocal that follows the target scale exactly. Note though that if the vocalist uses a lot of natural vibrato, this may translate into hard trills, so it's often best to start with a fairly straight vocal performance, incorporating little or no vibrato and with well-defined note transitions rather than long slurs. Here's a short vocal phrase, first as recorded, and secondly with fast Auto-Tune or hard tuning applied to it. Tip 3. For a more subtle effect, apply hard pitch correction only to your FX sends. In this example, I've put Auto-Tune before a delay plugin fed from an aux send. The correction speed has again been set to its fastest, so the delays are quantized in pitch. This is how it sounds. Tip 4. If your pitch corrector supports MIDI control of pitch, then you can control the target pitch from a monophonic MIDI track. This will ensure that the notes change exactly when and where you want them to in relation to the song's time grid. Set the MIDI notes so that they don't overlap, but at the same time don't leave spaces between the notes or the pitch correction won't be applied in those regions. To be a bit more creative, you can set the MIDI notes to form a harmony with the original part. This allows you to retune a copy of the original track to create a new part that can be layered with the original. This can sound quite unnatural if the pitch changes more than a few semitones, but actually I like to exploit that characteristic to create more experimental sounds. In this example, a new melody has been applied to the copy track and then reverb added to create an atmospheric sound, like this. Tip 5. Creating musical soundscapes from found sounds can yield interesting, if unpredictable, results. To illustrate this, I've started with a short voice recording that was recorded on the user's phone, complete with plosive popping and other noises. I use my DAW's time stretching feature to make the phrase much longer, which also brings out a lot of artifacts relating to unpitched S&T sounds. My technique is then to edit out any sounds that are too harsh or sound too metallic, and then I apply autotune set to a suitable scale and a fast retune speed. The results will still sound fairly weird and mechanical at this point, but feed the track through a long reverb with the dry level set quite low, and it is transformed into something altogether much more usable. Also, you could add the treated part to a reverse version of itself, and you'll often find some happy accidents that form the basis of a new song section, as was the case with the demo tune I put together at the end of this podcast. As half of an experimental music duo that goes by the name of Cydonia Collective, this technique for turning random speech into pitched textural sound beds is one that I use quite often. Here's the original phone recording.
It'll be really interesting to hear what you actually make from this little thing.
And here is the same thing stretched.
Really interesting to hear.
But now look what happens when we apply autotune and lots of reverb. And now layering with a reversed copy. If you want to record a voice specifically to create this effect, try to pick soft-sounding words with no S's or T's, as you'll have less editing to do. Tip 6. Autotune is actually a great tool for faking double tracking for vocals or instruments. For use with guitar, I put autotune on a copy of the original track and also delay the copy track by around 30 milliseconds. You can adjust the retune speed until you hear a natural pitch variation between the two parts. The faster the retune speed, the more difference you'll hear between the two parts, especially if the playing includes note bends or vibrato. Tip 7. Use a slow application of autotune to tighten up the pitching of fretless instruments or guitar passages that incorporate note bends. A fairly slow correction speed will allow slurs and bends to come through naturally, but the notes will then settle to a more accurate pitch. Conversely, you can sometimes use a faster retune speed to make your guitar parts sound more Eastern. This has the effect of speeding up note bends and turning vibrato into trills. Here's a short example. And now with the fast application of autotune. I've put together a demo tune using some of the principles discussed here, and I've used TuneTrack's Easy Drummer to provide an electronic backbeat, and I've added some fretless bass with gentle pitch correction to underpin that. Our original sung vocal phrase with a hard tune MIDI-controlled harmony effect is used at the start, followed by the stretched autotune speech with lots of added reverb. The processed speech section was copied and played backwards as described earlier, and there's an electric guitar part with some fake autotune ADT added. Autotune has also been used on the harmonics at the start of the tune, where the vibrato arm was used to create a simple melody from the picked harmonics. The notes were pretty close as recorded, but autotune makes sure they stay exactly where they should be. Well, that's it for this show, and thanks for listening. But just before I go, let me point you to soundonsound.com/podcasts, where you can find lots of other shows playing on our channels.